So I was at this year's BFI London Film Festival and enjoyed watching many new films. Before I get in, some of these reviews will be a bit brief and vague because there is quite a few films to get through here. Anyway, let's crack on. I kicked off at the festival with The Piano Lesson, based on the 1987 play by August Wilson. This is the directorial debut by Malcolm Washington, who also wrote the screenplay with Virgil Williams. Malcolm is the brother to John David Washington, credited as a leading star, and also is the son to Denzel Washington, credited as a producer. The film follows the lives of the Charles family as they deal with the themes of family legacy and more in deciding what to do with an heirloom, the family piano. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I was really struggling with the first act of this film. I was struggling to follow with the heavy dialogue and the cast going for this fast Southern American accent, so I would recommend watching this film with subtitles. But the film does pick up with the second act and definitely with the third act as well. As The Piano Lesson is based on a play, the film can be stagey and, as I mentioned already, it's heavy use of dialogue, and I know some people will have a problem with this. But there are moments in Malcolm Washington's directing when he does a mixture of show and tell. For example, when someone like Samuel L. Jackson talks about the background of the piano, then the film will cut to some flashbacks of where we see a member of the Charles family and the piano of how they came about together. This then makes the experience more believable for this relationship and how this piano means a lot to the family. The piano itself was used with a lot of purpose for the characters and their ancestors. The film does a great job of mixing tones and genres. On paper, this actually feels like it wouldn't work, but surprisingly, on execution, it does. This goes from scenes of history, drama, comedy, and even supernatural horror as well. It's full of self-awareness and subtlety, and being in this previous art format of being in a play, that would normally work more. So overall, it was visually well directed by Malcolm Washington for his directorial debut. The Piano Lesson has a great cast with excellent performances. Samuel Jackson and John David Washington showed a lot of energy and confidence in their performances, as they both previously performed as the same characters in a version of a play, so you can tell already that they know what they're doing and know how to support this by bringing it alive in a film format. We also have Ray Fisher, Michael Potts and Stephen James, who all give their best efforts, plus Danielle Deadwyler, who I thought was the standout in the film and could be an awards contender. I loved the detail of the costumes and especially the music, both from the singing and choreography. In addition, there was some neat camera work where you feel like you're being carried along with the story. This has some excellent sound and editing when it comes to timing, both on the setup and payoff. Overall, this was a neat directorial debut by Malcolm Washington, and I look forward to seeing what he does next. The film will be released in select UK cinemas on November the 8th, and then it will head to stream on Netflix on November the 22nd, and I'm going to give The Piano Lesson 4 stars out of 5. The second film I watched was The Seed of the Sacred Fig, a political thriller film set in Tehran. This is written and directed by Iranian filmmaker Mohammad Rasulov, with whom I'm not familiar with and I haven't seen his other films. This won the Special Jury Prize Award at this year's Cannes Film Festival. The film is about investigating Judge Iman grappling with paranoia amid political unrest in Tehran. When his gun vanishes, he suspects his wife and daughters imposing draconian measures that strain family ties as the societal rules crumble. This was a stressful, confident and knowledgeable experience based on the subject matter and what it offers. This is a film that wants to focus on themes of trust, paranoia, police brutality, and having the difficult but committed decision of choosing your career over your family. But most importantly, it's a film about women's identity, of being against this strict system and government. With all this being said, it's a film that wants you to think and see deeply. It has an unsettling tone with so much subtlety by not knowing when danger is going to pounce, with brilliant attention to detail by the cinematography. For example, we see people in the background walking, of being arrested and blindfolded, of having that feeling of uncertainty. The film has excellent makeup, production sets and costumes that are all relevant to Tehran's culture and religion. I loved the performances as the family, especially since not being familiar with any of them. Their characters are a mixture of being natural, honest and committed individuals to their own identities and responsibilities, in addition culture and religion, with dialogue between them all of being personal and realistic about the problems their country is facing. It does a great job of discussing their completely different perspectives, and it's really the chemistry that is the heart of this divided family in The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Some viewers will have a problem with the runtime. This is a 2-hour and 48-minute film, but for me, it honestly felt a good 2 hour on the dot, as I was so into this film's conflict. My only issue with this film was that sometimes the music was a bit too intense, especially when it was being at 11. It could have been cut out, in my opinion, as the tone was already doing a great job of being unsettling. I will not forget this film's experience and its subject matter. I highly recommend it, especially given what's been going on around the Middle East in recent years. You can check out The Seed of the Sacred Fig in UK cinemas on January the 24th, and I'm going to give it 5 stars out of 5. Next up, I watched Anora, a new romantic comedy and drama film, which is the latest by American writer and director Sean Baker, who was behind Tangerine, The Florida Project and Red Rocket. Baker's latest won the Palme d'Or at this year's Cannes Film Festival. The film is about Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn who meets and impulsively marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as the parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. This was my most anticipated film at the festival. I have pretty much loved all of Sean Baker's other films, and Anora was such a chaotic, hilarious, heartbreaking and amazing film. Baker has created a script that has a standard and sweet setup when Anora and Ivan meet and get married. But the story kicks off big time when Ivan runs off and the search begins to find him by his father's men and Anora. I don't know exactly why, but this part of the film felt different and chaotic as one problem happens after the other. It becomes so chaotic that it becomes satisfying on levels of drama, adventure, and of course comedy. It's like Baker has created this real-life scenario that could go in dark and traumatic directions for a character like Anora when it comes to blame, threats, and abuse. Instead, it's a what-if take, and by being mostly on comedy and lightness towards the situation. All of the performances were brilliant. Mikey Madison as Annie, aka Anora, was magnificent and stole all of the scenes with her toughness and beauty. I believed in the main character wanting a new chapter in an actual life and love towards Ivan. Mark Edelstein as Ivan, I do apologise if I said that surname wrong, was also fantastic as this charming and complex individual. Both of Anora and Ivan have great chemistry, especially when it comes to their loneliness and vulnerability. It's very well edited, it feels tight and fast, and never drags a moment during the presentation. The tone was soulful, both the drama and comedy. You feel it when it's meant to be funny and then serious. The cinematography has a lot of passion for its film graininess and a variety of colours by its red, blue and purple colour choices, making the film to be ambitious and luxurious. I had a blast with this film. It's probably my favourite from the festival and I cannot wait to watch it again. You can check this film out in UK cinemas on November the 1st. I'm going to give Anora 5 stars out of 5. Next up, I watched A Real Pain, which is a new comedy and drama film, and this is the second feature by American writer, director and actor Jesse Eisenberg, starring in this alongside Kieran Culkin. The film is about mismatched cousins David and Benji who reunite for a tour through Poland to honour their beloved grandmother. The adventure takes a turn when the odd couple's old tensions resurface against the backdrop of the family history. A Real Pain was sometimes a heartbreaking film, but at the same time it was a heartwarming experience. How these two different emotions work is of course by Jesse Eisenberg's excellent writing and directing in the creation of capturing Kieran Culkin's incredible performance as the character Benji. He carries a lot of heavy weight and shines in this film. Jesse Eisenberg is Jesse Eisenberg, but he is once again very entertaining as the character David, so I'm not saying that as a negative. But going back to the character of Benji, when I left the screening at the festival, I was thinking about how Benji has a part in all of us. Having a relation to someone who may have jumped on a train, either having a choice or not, without having a ticket and trying to avoid the train conductor. Or just feeling so lost in life by being knocked out by something or someone you once knew and loved. Not knowing how to continue to live and have a purpose at the moment. The cousins have fantastic chemistry. They're obviously and very much these two chalk and cheese, yin and yang individuals. As I mentioned earlier about Benji's rebel choices and difficult situations, well, David is pretty much the complete opposite. By having it all and doesn't like doing anything out of his comfort zone. To Benji, it is fun, but to David, it is scary. The film is very funny. There are so many great moments of comedic timing and many laugh out loud moments from me and the audience I was with. It knows the appropriate time to also be sad. For example, there is a scene when Benji, David and the group they're with on this trip around Poland go to a concentration campsite. And the distressing effect everyone feels afterwards, especially Benji, is so emotional. It's beautifully well shot. The framing of Poland's nature and architecture shows a lot of fascinating history and culture that is suitable towards Benji, David and the others for their Jewish identity. This must have been personal to Jesse Eisenberg as a storyteller, as he is Jewish himself. This is a film about grieving death, family, loneliness, regret, empathy and forgiveness. I felt Eisenberg communicated these themes very well. Regarding my issues, I felt the classical music was a bit too much for me by being repetitive and too dramatic. Plus, the film could have been an extra 10 to 20 minutes longer as I wanted more time between Benji and David by the final act. Worth watching with a friend or family member, especially if you both have completely different personalities. The film will be released in UK cinemas on January the 10th, and I'm going to give A Real Pain 4 stars out of 5. Next up was The End, a new drama, fantasy, sci-fi and musical film by documentary American filmmaker Joshua Oppenheimer, who was behind a couple of excellent documentaries, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence. I recommend both of them. This is his first feature-length fiction debut, and Oppenheimer himself also wrote the film along with Rasmus Hiesterberg. The film is about a golden age style musical about the last human family. I was very excited to see The End, getting to see Joshua Oppenheimer make his first feature, and after I watched the film, at first I didn't know exactly how I felt about it, so I did some thinking, and in the end, this was an interesting experimental film, but at the same time, this was a strange experience. There are of course positives to this film. I loved the impressive production sets, props, hair, makeup and costumes, full of brilliant efforts of being massive, colourful and transformative. All of it helps to create this remote and isolated tone for the location of where the characters are based. It's set inside these huge and real sandy mines, and at first I felt like I was watching an Oppenheimer documentary. It grabbed my interest straight away by praising the striking establishments and wide shots, captured by the documentary and skilled Russian cinematographer Mikhail Krichman. The framing of Krichman's work makes you feel moved by its presentation and did a fantastic job. The film has a great cast and confident performances by Tilda Swinton, George McKay, Moses Ingram, Michael Shannon, Lenny James, along with Bronagh Gallagher and Tim McInerney. They all have neat chemistry. I especially liked Moses Ingram and George McKay together, the way they learn and discuss about the world itself and being a role model. In my opinion, the musical scenes were enjoyable and catchy with impressive choreography and not dull like Joker 2. If you love musicals, you will enjoy this. If you do not, this will not be your cup of tea. My problem though with the end was the script. It felt like being on the nose, specifically the dialogue. I just didn't feel much emotion during the dramatic moments when discussing what humanity used to be. In addition, discussions about the past and guilt, trust and protection between all of the characters. It was obvious and not subtle, which was a shame, because if it wasn't like that, I would have liked this film a lot more. In my opinion, this concept would work much better as a musical play. But this is not a bad start for Joshua Oppenheimer in creating fiction. I will definitely continue to support whatever he does next, if it is still fiction or going back to factual. This is one of those films you need to watch more than once, so I would like to see it again. I didn't love this, but I didn't hate it, and I did not waste my time. And I'm going to give the end 3 stars out of 5. The second to last film I watched was We Live in Time, a new romance and drama film by Irish filmmaker John Crowley, who was behind a couple of episodes of True Detective Season 2, The Goldfinch, and an episode of Black Mirror from Season 5. This was written by Nick Payne. The film is about an up-and-coming chef and a recent divorcee who finds their lives forever changed when a chance encounter brings them together in a decade-spanning, deeply moving romance. This was a gentle, sweet, funny, and very much an emotional experience. From the beginning of the film, it has a score that will move you to tears by being spiritual and cinematic. Andrew Garfield and especially Florence Pugh deliver outstanding performances and chemistry. Both of them together carry the film with the emotional journey ahead. It's well edited, feeling transitional and moving, going back and forth between the past and the present. To me, it's never felt inappropriate and repetitive. The film spends enough time with its good pacing in the 2 different time zones, and I was just reminded of the brilliant American TV show called This Is Us. There are some sweet and innocent sense of humour moments, but I did feel that maybe some of it was forced during the heavy drama. This has some of that sweet product placement. And I have to say though, I did chuckle at the Weetabix one. The dialogue felt naturalistic and honest about the importance of spending time with loved ones as much as possible, either doing something for yourself or someone else to be remembered by. This film was advertised to make you cry. It does the job well, trust me. By the end, the audience I was with was in tears by its subtle and striking finale. Worth watching with a friend and family member and just anyone that's a loved one to put your head on their shoulder. The film will be released in UK cinemas on New Year's Day, and I'm going to give We Live in Time 4 stars out of 5. The final film I watched was Queer, a new drama, romance and psychological film. Directed by Italian filmmaker Luca Guadagnino, who was behind A Bigger Splash, Call Me By Your Name, the Suspiria remake, We Are Who We Are limited series, Bones and All, and just this year he recently directed Challengers starring Zendaya. This was written by author William S. Burroughs and was adapted into a screenplay by Justin Kuritzkis, who also wrote Guadagnino's Challengers. The film is set in 1950s Mexico City about William Lee, an American expat in his 40s who leads a solitary life amidst a small American community. However, the arrival in the town of Eugene Alderton, a young student, stirs William into finally establishing a meaningful connection with someone. The first thing that I feel is important to address to the fans of Call Me By Your Name: do not go in expecting this film to be another version of that film. Queer is a completely different experience, and this is not realistic. It is a surreal, expressive and adventurous film about love, addiction and connection, and I was so fascinated when it went in obscure directions. The opening of the film is like Call Me By Your Name, with its attention to detail of the props to establish the two main characters and the locations, and with its colourful graphics. But this is very much like when David Cronenberg adapted Burroughs' Naked Lunch, as I mentioned, by its obscure, fascinating visual presentation. The sets, miniature sets, costumes, cinematography and sexy dialogue were pretty strange but mind-blowing, and you could never take your eyes off the screen. Daniel Craig delivers a passionate and theatrical performance as the character William Lee. His character is a lonely, desperate and addicted person who wants love and drugs. Drew Starkley as Eugene was really good and delivered a lot of subtlety. Jason Schwartzman was also in this. He did a fantastic job by his minor role and was pretty unrecognisable. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score was so eerie and cinematic. It's very well edited by its tight cutting and has a slow and steady pace. My only issue with this film was the music by the other artists. The songs were used of being heavily overused for nearly every scene along with the score, and in my opinion they could have trimmed it down a bit. This is its own Luca Guadagnino film. My advice would be to go in completely blind, but at the same time, I don't think this is going to be for everyone. I cannot wait to watch this again. I think there is so much to unpack about it. It is one of the most unforgettable films that I saw at the festival, and even from this year itself. The film will be released in UK cinemas on December 13th, and it will eventually head to stream on Mubi. I'm going to give Queer 4 stars out of 5. And those are the 7 films that I watched at this year's BFI London Film Festival. Before I go though, I wanted to mention one other thing I did at the festival, and that was attending a screen talk about one of my favourite filmmakers, Denis Villeneuve. This was an absolute treat. I was so lucky to get a ticket for this, and it was worth it. Villeneuve was interviewed about his entire career from his low-budget first feature, August 32nd on Earth, to Dune Part 2, in a discussion with Ted Lasso's actor and writer Brett Goldstein. The packed audience I was with got to experience and understand how Villeneuve began with documentary filmmaking through wanting to make films in his style in creating characters who struggle with their identities in an isolated world. That always leads to this anti-life with a suspenseful tone, and at first, not having much money. Eventually, Villeneuve got to take his style and work with Hollywood when making Prisoners. He didn't want to go on this path and thought it was going to destroy his career because at first Villeneuve was concerned he would lose his entire creative freedom. So you can see why making a film like Enemy around the same time making Prisoners was beneficial to him. And just in case the big budget Hollywood film would be a flop. But that didn't happen with the success of Prisoners and the other big and popular films he made afterwards. We got to watch clips from Polytechnique, On Sondies, Sicario and Dune Part 2. We got to learn about how to avoid working with difficult and arsehole actors, which was pretty hilarious. I don't want to give any more away, so if you're interested, make sure to check out the full interview on the BFI's YouTube channel when it's eventually released. And that is it. I had a great time this year. As always, it was different as it should be. Lots of mingling, travelling to different venues, and watched many upcoming great films. I would say my only issue from this year is that I wish that I saw Andrew Garfield with a cardboard cutout of Florence Pugh at my screening of We Live in Time. I mean, it would have been pretty hilarious to get that on camera. Oh well, it is what it is. But anyway, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And please let me know your thoughts about the films in the comments below. If you yourself have already seen them at any festival or a preview screening, feel free to watch another video and check out my social media sites. Links are in the description below. Have a wonderful day. Until next time.